Valerie and I are super happy to be here. Just a little bit about us. We are both volunteers with the League of Women Voters of the Austin area. All the League of Women Voters across the country, all the chapters are volunteer run. So nobody's paid. We just do this because we love democracy. I'm the vice president of voter service, and I'm also work as a Travis County elections judge um, at I've done it 3 or 4 elections, and I love to do it, so I'm going to continue with that. And Valerie is our incoming voter registration and turnout chair. She's also a mentor in the VDR program for Travis County, and she's a tax office volunteer. So I have wrangled her into this to do the first part of our presentation, which is voter registration, because she knows everything about voter registration. Just a tiny little plug for the League of Women Voters. I like to make sure people know that it's not just for women. It's called the Women Voters because that's 100 years ago. It was launched to help women get the vote, but it's open to men and women alike. It's nonpartisan. We don't we don't support candidates or parties. We just want to encourage people to actively participate in government, and we provide education and activities. All this list of activities on the side is just the things that we do in the Austin area. So voter registration, we do get out the vote stuff. I'll go through our voters guide and vote 411, education opportunities, also our candidate forums that we do for local elections. We have a high school voter registration program where we go into the high schools and register students and show them the ins and outs of voting. We do monthly policy presentations if anybody's interested. And then we do voter education programs such as the one that we're doing now. There's our website, lwvaustin.org. So if you want to know about any of these programs, just head over there. So let's get started. Making democracy work is our mission, and we have developed this presentation and organized it into 3 buckets. At the end of each section, we'll have a Q&A. So don't feel like you have to, hold all your questions till the end. Valerie's going to talk about voter registration, and then I'll do education and then participation. So at the end of each of those sections, you'll have a chance to ask questions as well as at the end. So Valerie, take it away. This is your baby.
Hi, let me hold on. Just realized I've got the words covered up with our pictures. There we go. Okay. All right. Am I eligible to register to vote? You are registered. Well, can you advance that slide, Pam?
There we go. Yeah.
If you are, you have to be a U.S. citizen. The most common question I get about that is that there are some circumstances in which if you live in some place that has like a homeowners association or a private utility, sometimes you don't have to be a citizen to vote in those. And some people misunderstand that to mean that you don't have to be a citizen to vote at all. And that's not true. You do have to be a US citizen to vote in government elections. You have to be 17 years and 10 months, or basically 2 months shy of 18 years old. But you also have to be 18 on election day to fill out the forms. And the reason they do that is because if you're born because you have to register 30 days ahead of the election. If you are born in October, you wouldn't be able to register to vote in November if you couldn't do it ahead of time. Like my birthday is at the end of October, so I wouldn't have been able to vote the year I turned 18 if I hadn't been able to register 2 months early. You have to not be declared mentally incompetent by a judge, not just by your relatives. And if you have been ever convicted of a felony, you have to have completed the terms of whatever sentence you might have been given. If you want to double check if you're registered, you can go to votetexas.gov and see the am I registered. I would caution that if somebody has made a typo on your name, it may return that you're not found. The fastest and easiest way to look yourself up on votetexas.gov is with your driver's license number, if you have one. It has to be your Texas driver's license number. And so it'll do your Texas driver's license number and your date of birth. One of the options is VUID, which is your voter ID, and nobody knows that unless they have their voter registration card right in front of them. It's like 12 digits long. It's really not something people have on hand. So I would use your driver's license if possible. If not, try different variations of your name. If there's common ways that people misspell your last name or your first name, try those too if it doesn't find you the first time around, because it is very specific. As a last resort, you could use the, the county and date and all that kind of stuff, but they require a lot of information to be put in. If you're in Travis County, you can go to votetravis.com and look yourself up. If you look yourself up that way, you only need your last name and your date of birth. So it's a much easier, faster way to look yourself up, but that's only Travis County. Williamson also has a website, but I don't know exactly what their voter lookup website is. It's somewhere buried in their regular elections website. So to register to vote, most of the time when we are not sheltering at home, you can go and find volunteer deputy registrars like myself and Pam, and we will be at fairs and festivals. We go into schools frequently. We do farmers markets and basically anywhere you can find people congregating. Odds are pretty good that a deputy registrar will be out there at some point. And we fill out the forms. One of the benefits of doing that with a VDR is that we can double check the form and make sure that you haven't missed anything. Make sure that you've signed it and dated it and checked all the boxes and everything else, and things that would get your application not able to be processed. We can make sure that you've got all that. Now that we have there's fewer people who are out doing things. So you can use a mail-in form, and that's what we've provided for you guys today. They are the same information as the in-person forms, but the downside is that you won't have one of us to double check it and make sure you haven't missed anything. The most important thing I would say to double check and make sure that you don't miss is you have to be a citizen. So make sure that you've marked that box up under 1 that says, are you a US citizen? And then on your residence address, there is no box for an apartment number or a unit number. So make sure that you put that in there, because a lot of people will miss that. And if they don't have an apartment number, they cannot mail you your voter registration card, and so they can't process it. So in number 3, make sure that your residence address includes your apartment if you live in one. Your mailing address, you only need to fill that out if you have a separate mailing address, like a PO box or something along those lines. And so at Shop LC, it looks like you have 2 locations, with the warehouse near the time clock and the main building by the security guard. And you can pick up forms for, I believe, Travis and Williamson County, and both of those are available.
We also have the general forms.
Okay, the Secretary of State, which is for any county that's not Williamson or Travis. And you should register in the county where you live. The counties do not talk to each other. So in Texas, if you move from one county to another, you need to register to vote again in the new county, or you are just not registered to vote anymore. So online, you can do that. If you move within the county, you can update your address with the county online, but you cannot do it if you move from one county to another, because it's considered a new registration when you are in a new county. And here's the thing, in Texas, you cannot register to vote online. They do not accept an electronic signature. They require a wet signature, meaning it has to be done in ink on a piece of paper in order for it to be a valid voter registration. So if you see a website that's claiming to be able to register you to vote, like vote.org, which now they say that, Texas doesn't accept that, but there was a time when it was a little confusing as to whether you're registered or not when you use them. But there is no system by which you can register to vote in Texas just online. You can go to a website and print a voter registration form, but you can't actually complete it and submit it online without then mailing it to your county or to the Secretary of State. And if you use registertovote.org, registertovote.org, they will mail you a pre-filled application and a postage paid envelope that you then, all you have to do is sign it and date it, put it in the envelope, and it'll be mailed to your county. And then after you've registered to vote, this is how you know you were successful, is look for this voter registration certificate in the mail. It will be a postcard. It will not be in an envelope, and it will look just like the one that's shown on this slide. It'll be orange and white, and it's about half the size of a piece of paper. If you have not gotten one of those, or when you get it, it has the incorrect information on it, like your name is spelled wrong or your birthday's wrong, something along those lines, You should contact your county's office, which the phone number will be somewhere up along the top, along with the website for the county if you need to, any further information. If you have not received one of these within about 30 days after you've submitted your application, again, call the county and find out if maybe they've got it, but they haven't mailed out your certificate yet or something like that. Or if there was a problem with your application, they can tell you that they weren't able to process it. There is, for most counties, no mechanism for them to contact you if there's a problem. So this may be the only way you know that there was a problem, is that you don't get the certificate in the mail. So definitely keep an eye out for it, because that's your first indicator. If you move, they cannot forward this to your new address. So that's how the county knows that you've moved and you don't get to vote at that place anymore. So it's also important to update your address, because your voter registration card can't be sent to you if you don't. Oh, and this says that you should bring it with you to the polling place. That is not required. You don't have to have this with you to vote. So if you haven't gotten it in the mail, that doesn't mean you can't vote. But like the slide says, if there are any issues, this is your proof that you are actually registered. If they, for some reason, can't find you in the system, again, if your name is spelled wrong or something like that, they try to look you up and they can't find you. This is your proof. So I would recommend you take it if you have it. But like if you're on your way home from work and you realize, I don't have my card, but I want to go vote, you can still do that. And then, yes, you should absolutely register to vote right now. You have to do it 30 days before the election. So the deadline is October 5th. And that's to be either postmarked, or if you're turning it in person, it has to be turned in person by October 5th. But with everything that's going on with the post office right now, and the fact that mail is significantly slower than it used to be, we don't know how long it will take to get your registration application into the county and then get your voter registration card back to you, so that you know whether there's an issue or not. So I would do it as soon as humanly possible. All right, are there any questions about voter registration? It's a very complicated thing in Texas. It's probably more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
No, the question that popped up immediately got addressed on the previous slide. So.
Okay.
Thanks, Valerie. Okay, then we will move on to the next section, which is voter education. So we never recommend just getting registered and then heading to the polls. We want you to know what you're voting for and who you're voting for. And we want you to get unbiased information, which is harder and harder to come by these days. So the upcoming election is a general election, and these are, I didn't even put all of the races that are on individual ballots. There might be in some cities, there might be mayors, there might be ballot initiatives or referendums or whatever. But the point is, this is going to be a long ballot. And so you will want to know ahead of time who you're going to vote for, because you don't want to get in there and see names you don't recognize. So how do you find out what's on your ballot? The first place we recommend is to use our voter's guide, because as we said, we're nonpartisan. And what we do is we actually just completed the process of, we had a committee together to create the questions, unbiased, unleading questions, 4 or 5 or 6 questions for every single candidate that's on our ballot in the Texas area. Those questions will go to the candidates. They will write their answers. What they said is printed verbatim. So if they're a terrible speller, if they don't know their grammar, whatever, it's going to be printed verbatim. And we do that because we want people to see exactly what your candidates are. They're representing themselves. All races in the area are covered. There's a summary of if there's any ballot initiatives or referendums on individual, in cities or municipalities. There's other important info about Texas ID and what's needed at the polls. We produce both a Spanish and an English printed version. And this year they will be in the Austin Chronicle. We believe in the October 23rd issue. That's not completely confirmed yet, but that's the one that we think it's going to be in. So you have to pick up a Chronicle. Those are free, as you know, you'll see them at grocery stores and in front of coffee shops and all over town. The voter's guide will be inside that. issue. There should be a note on the front of the, pointing people to the fact that that is in there. We also print thousands of standalone copies. And right now we're looking for where we might distribute those. Typically they would be in libraries, which are closed, they'd be in public places. So our chairperson of the voter's guide is looking at where else we're going to distribute this. But this is basically what it looks like. So look for it after about October 20th or so is when they'll be printed. All of that information that goes into the printed guide also gets uploaded into vote411.org. This is the League of Women Voters of national website. All local leagues put their information from their voters guides into this electronic forum. And what's great about this is you can get your personalized ballot. So the paper version has all the races everywhere, and you kind of have to go through and find your district and your city and find your people. On vote411.org, you put in your address and it brings up your personal ballot. So with your district races, your city council races, etc. And the great thing about it is it's now in 4 different languages. So English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And in fact, the Spanish one has a special, if you go to vote411.org/ES/TX, there's even more information in Spanish there. It's much more complete. So this is a fantastic, non-biased way to get your information. And then I believe you can print once you pull up your races and you pick them all, you can print it out. So then you have a printout, which is super important because, well, as I'll say later, you can't bring your phone in. You can't use your phone in the voting booth, but I'll talk about that in a second. So in addition to vote411.org, do your homework. See credible sources of information. And a lot of people, especially young people, tend to get all their information on social media. And the fact is, a lot of what you see on social media is biased at best, or a malicious attempt to manipulate you at worst. So we recommend kind of solid, credentialed journalism to get your information. Visit the candidate websites. Go get the information from the horse's mouth. Find out what their platforms are. Every single candidate will have statements about, how they feel about important issues of the day. See if what they are saying reflects your values. And then finally, look at who's endorsing candidates and funding their ads. If that's information, it should be. There's a lot of dark money out there. There's a lot of PACs that you can't. There's not a whole lot of insight sometimes, but sometimes there are, and you can see who's endorsing your candidates, and that is kind of like a third-party credential on specific candidates. The other way to get fantastic information on local races, the league, we run city council candidate forums, and typically in a normal year, these would be at community centers in the districts where there are races, but this year they are just all online, and so you can, because of COVID, obviously. So District 2, 4, 10, 6, and 7 all have races, and you can see where those districts are. You may not know specifically which one you're in, but if you guys are all in, if you're working in North Austin and you might be in 7 or you might be in 6. So look on your voter registration certificate, there is actually a place where you can see where what your city district is if you don't know it. So look for those you can watch it in real time on those channels that are named there on radio or online. It's streaming online at KAZI-FM. And then it'll be on demand on that other station, which I can't, ATXN. So fantastic way to get information on city council candidates. And I cannot stress enough, people tend to get really excited and interested, and people vote more when it's a presidential election. But it's the local races, that really affect your life day to day. Like, the pothole in the middle of your street, and how your local taxes are being spent, your property taxes, all of that kind of stuff, your schools. So city councils, school district commissioners, and local judges and all that are very important to your everyday life. And so we really recommend people get get educated about your local candidates and get as excited about local races as we do about national ones. So as I pointed out before, you are not allowed to use your phone while in the voting booth. So we recommend printing out, either like we said, go to Vote 411, pick your people, print it out, or handwrite it. You can certainly bring in paper. And it's such a long ballot. And there is no longer a way to just say, I want to vote Republican, boom, 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 and do a straight party ticket. You have to go through every single race. And so you want to make sure that you know who you're voting for before you go in there. So that's it on voter education. Are there any questions regarding this section?
There was one question, Pam, and Valerie addressed it in chat, but I think it bears worth repeating. On the county map, the question was, is if there's any similar type of information for other cities or counties in the area, because you showed Austin on that map on that previous slide.
Yes,
but like, is there something like that for Round Rock or any of the other areas?
To find that map, I just went to, I forget what, I just went to a, Travis County map and pulled it out. So yes, you could just Google Williamson County map or whatever to see. I don't know what Valerie suggested, but it should be pretty easy to Google to see where the boundaries of your county are. Valerie, what do you think?
Well, the question in the chat was whether that map applied to Williamson County or just Travis. And I was pointing out that it is actually for the city of Austin. So even if you're in Williamson County or Hayes or, one of the counties that Austin kind of creeps into, those districts would still apply. But as far as other cities and municipalities and counties that have things like the forums that you were talking about, those kind of the smaller the municipality, the less likely they are to have something along those lines.
Right. Oh, you were asking about the districts, not the county map.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, these are just the Austin. Sorry, I'm Austin centric. There is a league in Williamson County. And I don't know that they're organized enough to do candidate forums. However, what happens as we get closer to the election, sometimes we'll get asked, our league will get asked, can you do this commission, can you do a forum for this, this commissioner race or whatever? And we will go and do that. So I don't know if there are other, if we're running any other ones yet. These are the ones I know about for sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, let's move on to vote. This is the biggest, the biggest section here. So voter participation. So once you're registered and you know who you're voting for and what you're doing, then you're going to vote. And so there are a whole lot of issues surrounding voter participation. So let's just dive right into it. So the first thing is, when you go to vote, you don't just show up. You need to also bring some ID. And so as you can see, there's a whole list of IDs that Texas will accept, including a driver's license, a handgun license, a passport. If you don't have one of these things, the other thing is this Texas election ID certificate, which I guess if you're not a driver and you don't own a handgun and you don't travel internationally, so you don't have a passport, you could just go to the tax office and get this election ID certificate. However, right now it's very difficult to do that, and the timelines are very long for any kind of ID. Even to get a Texas driver's license, I have been told that a kid who just turned 18 and wants to vote and is waiting for his driver's test, he can't even schedule it till December because they're doing it's all it's slowed down the whole thing because of COVID. So if you can't get one of these government issued IDs, you can produce an alternative supporting form of ID. And I put in there voter registration certificate because as an election judge, I'm always on the resolution table. And if someone doesn't have ID, they come to me. If they have their voter registration certificate, it's so easy for me to look them up that way. There's also and then once you do that, you just fill out this form, which is a reasonable impediment affidavit. And you just say, yeah, I couldn't get another form of ID, and you fill that out, you sign it, and you go vote. There are also
if I could pop in for just a second.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Sure.
If you don't have a Texas ID yet, you still can register to vote. You don't have to prove who you are or where you live or anything when you register to vote. There's no, like, I'm not even allowed to ask, like, are you sure this is really you? You know, there is no requirement that you prove any of this up front. It's just when you actually physically go to vote. And the driver's license must be a Texas driver's license, but your out-of-state driver's license can be one of those supplemental things that's
Yes,
used to
thank
prove
you.
it if you don't have one.
Yeah, good point, Valerie. And so if you go to votetexas.gov, there's FAQs, and it'll give you a whole list of other other alternative supporting forms of ID that you can use. And just to add on to what Valerie said, so when you fill out your voter registration card, you either need the last 4 digits of your social security number or your Texas driver's license number, and that's all you need in order to register. Okay. So next, where do you go? Polling locations and times. So in both Travis and Williamson County, early voting now starts on October 13th, runs through October 30th. This is, the governor actually expanded this. It was October 19th and he pushed it back 6 days. So good for him. And you can go anywhere where there's a vote here or vote.key sign. So you're not assigned a polling location. Anywhere where you see a sign, you can go do it. Typically, the early voting places are in grocery stores. That is not happening during COVID. So it'll be in places that you're not using vote here signs. And typically they've been in, they're just, those places are too small and too hard to do social distance. So look for those signs. On election day, also, you do not have to go to a specific, it used to be you had to, go to your precinct polling location. You may now go anywhere where there's a vote here, vote a key sign in both counties. And it's always 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., except Sundays, it's a little shorter hours. So just make sure if you're going to vote on Sunday, I think they might close at 6, maybe 5. And then on election day, as long as you're standing in line at a polling place at 7 o'clock, you can vote. Even if that line is out the door and around the block and it takes 3 hours, as long as you were in line at 7, you can still vote. And what will happen is a poll worker will go out and stand at the back of the line and will turn away anyone who wasn't in line at 7. But as long as you're in line at 7, you're good. Also, I just want to give a little plug, another plug for votetravis.com. And I believe the Wilco site has a similar functionality where, at least in Vote Travis, you can go on there and closer to election day, you'll see stop lights and all the polling locations on a map with stop lights, and it's either red, yellow, or green. And as a poll worker, I know this, like every couple hours we have to put up how long the wait time is. And so those stop lights kind of in real time show you how long the lines are. So if you think, oh, I'm just going to run over here to this church or whatever, and the line is out the door, go to votetravis.com, find another polling location. Maybe you have to drive a mile or 2, but if there's another one that's nearby that's less traffic, head over there. So this is a great thing that I know Vote Travis does. Do you know, Valerie, if Wilco?
Williamson's is identical. They got theirs from Travis.
Okay, so that's awesome. All right, so that's early voting. So now come election, what's happening on election day? So there's basically 6 steps. You come through the door, you use your ID to get checked in, and you'll get a ballot card, which is a long, narrow piece of paper with a little slot on the side. You will, next is select. So you're going to feed that ballot card into this machine, which I'm showing here, where those little green arrows are. You feed your ballot into this ballot marking device, and it's all touchscreen from there. And it's either Spanish or English. You can choose your language, and you go through every race. And it's, now we're all very familiar with touchscreen technology, so it's super easy. The third step is to verify. So before you print out your ballot, it's going to give you a review screen, and you're going to want to look at every single choice you made, make sure that you didn't make a mistake. You can go backwards. If you think, oh, wait, I pressed the wrong box for that, and you can go backwards, change your selections, whatever you need to do before you hit print. Once you're satisfied, you hit print, that ballot card comes back out the slot, and I recommend looking at it again. Make sure that it says on that piece of paper what you want. The next step, you walk over and there will be a poll worker, making sure you go do this last step because you haven't voted until you drop your ballot into the actual ballot box, the ballot scanner. When these machines first came out, which were back in the primary in March, a lot of people were like walking out with their ballot in their hand. And so there were these lost ballots, abandoned ballots. And so now there's a concerted effort to make sure people remember to drop your ballots into that scanner. Then you get your sticker and you are a voter. So if you haven't voted using these new machines and the system, and you have any qualms about it, if you want to grab this QR code, that is a link. It'll take you to a link on the Travis County website that has a little video, short video that is a demonstration of the voting machines. And Michelle will make that available. Okay, so a lot of people are worried about, COVID safety and special accommodations during this time. So in the election, in the polling locations, every attempt is made for safety. So the poll worker, let me back this up. The governor's order exempted polling places, poll workers, and from wearing masks. It's strongly encouraged, but we are exempt for some unknown reason. That said, when I was working the polls at the runoff election, I saw one person without a mask. So, and we also have masks there. So if you don't have a mask and you want one, you can grab one. So most people, I would say 99% of people are wearing masks. But in addition to that, there's hand sanitizer everywhere. There's these little finger coverings that you can put on your index finger and make your choices that way to protect your finger. We do 6 feet distancing markers, and at the check-in location, there's a plexiglass screen between you and the poll worker checking you in. So those are all the safety precautions in the polling location. If you want to vote on election day, but you do not want to go into a polling location, we have this thing called curbside voting. As an election worker, I hate this, and I think Valerie does too, because what happens is we have to take a machine off the line. So we take a e-poll book has to go outside, and it's this process of going back and forth because we have to qualify you, we have to get your ID, then we have to take a voting machine, a ballot marking device out. It's a long process, and so it kind of gums up the works inside. However, we offer it, and if that's the way you want to vote, we will do it. We will accommodate you. Other accommodations, if you have a disability, we have audio. There's audio capabilities on the machines. There's headsets. All polling locations are ADA compliant. There's wheelchair accessibility at the machines. Like I said, there's a Spanish option on the ballot marking device, and you may bring in private assistance, which I address a little bit later. So let's talk about absentee voting or vote by mail for a second. This has been a huge issue this year because of COVID. And in fact, there was a lawsuit that the League of Women Voters joined about this. So in Texas, you must have a reason to vote by mail. And right there, I circled where on the application for ballot by mail, where you must select your reason. You must be 65 years or older. You must have a disability. You must be absent from the county. My college age students typically get their ballots by mail. That's what they check. They're at their college location, but they use their home address to vote, or you're in jail. So the lawsuit had to do with the disability reason, because the argument was that people don't want to go to the polls because they're afraid of getting COVID, and that should be counted as a disability. What the Texas Supreme Court ruled, as you can see here, this is straight from their ruling, a voter can take into consideration aspects of their health and their health history that are physical conditions in deciding whether, under the circumstances, to apply to vote by mail because of disability. And Dana DeBeauvoir, I can never say her name, who's our elections clerk, has said the elections office has no legal authority to require voters verify their disability to apply for mail. She said, we are not doctors, we are not qualified, nor are we authorized to ask you questions about your health. So what
Well,
this is
not
saying
only
is,
that, legally they are not allowed to ask. It's not just
right,
that they don't have to or anything, but they're literally not allowed to ask.
they're not allowed to ask, and there's no place on the form. So if you consider your health and your conditions, and you can select disability, and you can vote by mail. So how do you do that? You have to get an application. We have applications at Shop LC, or you can go. I put the votetexas.gov site up there again, because there is one. There's an application online that you can download if the forms run out at your office. You want to fill out and return. This is an application to vote by mail. And you're going to send that to your county's voting clerk. And here's the two addresses for Travis and Williamson. Anyway, you can find if you live in a different county, you can go to votetexas.gov and find the address for your clerk. But these are the two for the most likely counties where you live. The application must be received by October 23rd. But like everything that we're saying, disregard the deadlines and do it now. Do it as soon as possible, because the mail has been slow and there's an influx of applications. So the application must be received by them. Once they get the application, they process it, they will send you a ballot. I'm telling people now, because I keep getting these questions. I applied, last month, I still haven't gotten it. That's because they haven't even printed the ballot yet. So the ballots get printed much closer to the election. I would say a month or 3 weeks or closer to the election. And so you won't, even if you applied a month ago, you're not going to get your ballot until much closer to the election. But as soon as you get it, do not wait, do not delay, because again, the mail is slow, and it must be postmarked by election day and received by 5 p.m. on the day after the election. You do not want to run that bet that you're gonna stick it in the mail on election day, and the very next day it's gonna be at the elections office. I just would not bet on that. So mail it as soon as possible. And you can, there's a little note there at the bottom, you can check with your counties to check on the status of your application if you're concerned. And 30 days after the election, you can check and see if your ballot did count, if you're concerned. Okay, next one. Sorry, we have 3 slides on vote by mail because it's so complicated. So this happened during the runoff election, where I got a few people who came in and said, I applied for a ballot, I never got it. And so I'm here. And so if you request but do not receive your ballot before election day, you can still vote. It just means now you have to come in. You're going to find your nearest polling location using that votetravis.gov or the Wilco one. You can check in with the poll worker, tell them that you applied and you didn't receive it. When I pull you up on my screen, it should be flagged. If everything went right and you requested it, but you didn't get it yet, or they put it in the mail, there'll be a flag there for me that says, this person got a ballot. What I do as a poll worker, I invalidate that ballot by mail. I spoil it basically, and then I check you in as a regular voter, and you vote in person like everybody else. So not to worry, but it will mean that you have to go to a polling location. So a few other things, there's a lot to think about. I know everyone's got different circumstances, but here's just a few websites and organizations that help with a lot of different special circumstances. There's an election protection hotline. Say you go to a polling place and you feel like something is untoward, they're not letting you vote, or they're saying you can't vote, you can call that number and that to resolve that. To know all your rights in the voting booth, there's a whole list of them, votetexas.gov. There's a link there that you can read that. If you're at all concerned, read that and find out what your rights are in the voting booth. Like for instance, say you think you made a mistake, you printed out your ballot and it's wrong for some reason, you can go back to the poll worker and say, I need a new ballot. You can do that. You can get 3 ballots actually. So that's just an example of what your right is. Your rights are in the voting booth. So you can mess up twice basically. And still get another ballot to do it over again. If you have trouble with your car or you don't have transportation, there's an organization called Vote Riders that will help you. And of course, obtaining an ID, you'd want to do that way before the election, but there's an organization called Spread the Vote that will help you obtain the correct ID. And then if you have a disability, Rev Up Texas is a fantastic organization that provides resources and helps people with those issues. And then private assistance. So say you have a family member who is a Spanish speaker only, or a Chinese speaker, or a Vietnam, whatever, any other language. And that voter can bring in an interpreter, and that person just gets sworn in, with this oath of assistance, and that person can help the voter do the selections. So, and of course, as it says here, it can't be your employer, someone who's pressuring you, a union officer, or anyone who's pressuring you to vote in any way. The poll workers in the polling location can also help you, and so there is unlikely to be, there might be Spanish speakers. I wouldn't count on there being people with a whole lot of language skills, different language skills, but oftentimes there's a Spanish speaker, a poll worker. Okay, that is voter participation. Do we have any questions about all of that? What happens on election day?
There was one question, Pam, and Valerie did a great job of addressing it, but I'll just repeat it for everyone's benefit. The question is, what if the passport is expired and we still don't have a Texas driver's license? My son's in this position.
And Valerie, did you say 4 years out? I don't know what it is. I know for the Texas driver's license, it can be 4 years out of date.
If you're under 70, any form of ID that you have can be expired up to 4 years. If you're 70 or over, though, it can be expired for as long as you want. My grandmother was 100 when she passed away last year, and she was still using her driver's license from when she was like 78.
Forever young.
Yes.
And that was it for questions on this section.
Okay, awesome. And so I just to wrap up, we really want to make sure people understand that the census, if you haven't yet filled out your census, it's super important, and we want to make sure you do it. It helps if you, when you fill out the census, it helps determine federal funding for all kinds of things that affect your local community. So schools, roads, emergency funding, all kinds of stuff. It also determines, and very importantly, political representation. So even if you're not eligible to vote, you can and should do the census because it helps your community, and you do not have to be eligible to vote in order to participate in the census. It's just a complete count of everyone in the United States. They just changed the deadline to September 30th. They gave us a month less time to get it done. So we want to make sure everyone knows that the deadline is September 30th now. And if you may have missed the mail, it might have been easy to miss. How it worked was you got something in the mail and you go online to fill it out. They will be sending out people to knock on doors, but again, in this age of COVID, we're just worried that people are going to miss this. So you can, even if you missed the postcard or the mailer, you can still go online to census.gov. And I went there to figure out where you could do it. You go to census.gov, you click on surveys and programs, and then 2020 census. So it's 3 clicks down, but you can participate in the census that way and help your community and make sure that you still have, this is a way you can have a voice in democracy, even if you're not eligible to vote. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is there's a shortage of election workers this year because you may know from voting in the past that a lot of election workers, they tend to be retired folks because they have the time, and a lot of those people are in those high risk categories for the virus. And so there's been a huge deficit of election workers. If you have any interest in this, I will tell you, it's a long day. I love doing it. It's exhilarating, and you feel it's rewarding. And in fact, it's not volunteer. You even get paid. Not a lot, but I think it's, $12 an hour, Valerie, something like that. So you do get paid. And early voting, they do shifts, I think, so that you don't have to be there, 14 hours. On election day, it's typically like a 15, 16-hour day if you're a judge, and a 14-hour day if you're a poll worker. So, but you do get paid. So here's the website we have a intake form on our League of Women Voters Austin webpage, and there's a QR code if you want to grab it, and you can fill it out, and the county will. I think this is only Travis County though, Valerie.
Yes.
But
and I just had a meeting a couple of days ago with the Travis County Elections Office, and they especially need technical people, the people who are actually going to go set up the voting machines and take them down at the end of the day. They really, really, really need tech people. So if you have technical skills and you're interested in helping, this would be this is a thing that they really, really need.
Okay. All right, so that's our last word. And if anyone has any final questions, we are certainly open to answering anything.
If there's no questions, I would like to add that, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, it doesn't look like nothing coming across.
Yeah, you do not have to be a citizen. There is no citizenship question. It is literally like 10 questions that it'll ask for your name, it'll ask for how many people live in your house, and then it'll ask a couple of other questions about you personally. But none of that information is ever passed outside of the Census Department in anything other than like a statistical sort of way. Nothing ever leaves there that is attached to you or your name, and there is no citizenship question.
Right, good point. All right, well, we really appreciate this opportunity. It's been great. As I told Michelle, it gave me the kick in the butt to actually put all this information in a presentation that we can use other places. And we're happy to bring you more forms if you run out, Michelle, anything you need.
Yeah, Darren and I will be monitoring these. I'll show you what the stations look like. Hold on, I got one right here next to me. So we've got all the manila folders. Oops, I'm going to tip them and spill them. That would be bad. All the information on the census and 411 cards, and we'll keep track of those. What's really good about them for anybody who wants to complete a form, no postage required. So I think that was, one thing that I was unaware of, because I actually have to fill one out. And in talking to Pam, found out that I actually did go onto the portal and did my quote unquote online form and then printed it out, and it needed a stamp. And in him hauling on the stamp, she told me that it was actually the wrong form, and I didn't even know. So I would have submitted something and waited and then been disappointed. So really appreciate you guys coming in today. Darren, do you have any final words before we sign off?
Register the vote, do the census, participate in your government. It's your responsibility as a citizen. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. This was really informational and very helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And then if we have any questions that aren't addressed, or someone has an individual issue, who should they reach out to, or what's the best way to get their answer for them?
I would say I'm happy for you to share my email, and I'm sure Valerie is also. So either of us would be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, ladies.
All right. Bye. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Pam and Valerie.
Thank you.